Okay, day two. Oh, hi, Isaac. Let's see. Let me get the volume up here. Oh, there we go. Okay. We're back to Mishlei 15:24. Orach Chayim Lamala Lamaskil Lamansur Misha Olamata. So we said a way of life upwards for the Maskil, which we don't really have a translation yet. Intelligent one, discerning one, something else. In order, we're saying Laman is in order. Sur, to turn away from or to swerve from if you're altar. She'ol mata, the grave below. Okay, our questions were manifold. What is meant by orach? Why not use the more common word derech? Two, in what manner is chayim qualifying orach? Is it path of life, like the stam reading, or path of the living, like Sadigon? And is it qualifying it quantitatively or qualitatively? You can't say quantifying it or anything. It's weird to say it that way. Three, what does Orach Chayim mean? Four, what does Lamala mean? Is it upwards as something significant in and of itself, or is it upwards towards something else that is up, meaning like to the upper thing? Is it directional or locational or positional? Okay. Five, what is a Maskil in this context? We saw that it's not usually, the most it's contrasted with is Mevish, right? So we said that maybe it could mean also successful, but with the implication of intelligence. Six, in what sense is the pasuk limiting this to him, to the Maskil? Is there not an Orach Chayim for others? What about the middleman? What about all the other Mishlei good guys? Right? If the Tzaddik doesn't have a Orach Chayim. Seven, what does Lama'an mean? Is it Kedei in order to that, or Ba'avor for the sake of? Eight, what does sur mean, to turn away, to swerve, or something else? What's the connotation? Nine, what are the opposites in this pasuk? So Chaim and Sheol seem like opposites, and Lamala and Mata. But what about Orach and what about Maskil? What's the implicit bad half compared to those? 10, what's the scenario? What is the person in the good half doing? What's the decision and decision-making scenario? 11, what is the implication, if any, of Mata instead of the more linguistically parallel Limata? 12, what does Sheol mean? Are there multiple Sheols? And is this one talking about the low one? Or is Sheol Mata just what we call it, lower grave, grave below? 13, what is this doing in Mishlei? How do we square the terms in the pasuk with a Mishlei mission? What do we mean by that?
Like trying to be nice to others. Or...
Yeah, no, I think the question though came from like, let's say like if it's talking about the afterlife or whatever, that sounds like beyond Mishlei's realm, you know. And 14, how, if at all, does this fit into the context of the local cluster, especially according to those who learn that the psukim are about advice? Okay, so then we had a couple approaches. Ariel's approach was about living. The Maskil is an intelligent person. One of the traps for such a person is not living in the world. Mishlei is telling him that he needs to live in the world and interact with other people doing worldly things, etc. Second half is saying that if he's not engaged in the world, his theories may not be correct, and his Maskil theories may not be correct, and that's like a grave. And the only way to see that is by living life. Okay, fine. And then just I'll call on Isaac in a second, but Sean on the second half suggested that if you are not a Maskil, it's not just that you're missing out on the Chaim Lamala, but you could be drawn towards a negative through your taiva, because that's going to fill in the void. And the overall message is to strike the balance between involvement in the world, but without getting trapped in it with the taiva stuff. And Isaac said the Maskil and the Havamina feels like if he's not involved in Seichel, then that's bad. Meaning that's the reason why he doesn't involve himself in the world, because he feels like any degree of like world involvement is going to take him away. Yeah, Isaac.
Yeah, I think with this approach, we didn't specifically explain the Lamala and Mata.
Yeah. Well, I think Sean's does though.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'd say like an additional thing about that.
Yeah.
I think, the person the Maskil who's having this Havamina, his, I'd say the feeling, like how I'm saying that, like I said, the Havamina is, he feels like if he's involved, in the Orach Chayim, then that is a Lamata, and so it's saying no, that's Lamala.
Say it again. The Maskil feels that if he's involved in Orach Chayim. Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, right. Yeah. I was so yeah.
Right. I mean, is that coming down from his ivory tower is a descent,
right?
And saying that.
Can you read that into the pasuk of Lama'an Sur Mishal Mata? Meaning, is that
and it's saying
identifying what the real Sur Lishal Mata is?
Yeah. It's really, like that's like the real downwards bad that he's avoiding.
Yeah, right. Okay, that's good. All right, so then we had a couple other approaches here. Isaac, these were quickly at the end. Isaac was saying a Maskil is someone who is a generically Mishlei good person who uses his intellect to make good decisions, and that person will be successful, as opposed to the Ben Mevish. So that, I guess, the Havamina for that is that the success of being a Maskil is not in the realm of Orach Chayim, right? Like you'll be successful, let's say, like I think that's a Havamina that a lot of people who are not like religious have, that like learning Torah somehow intrinsically removes you from the world and like dooms you to lack of success, but really it's the opposite, B'tzel Chachma, B'tzel Kesef, and then David said you need to apply your intelligence to get a good life, and if not, then you're going to the Sheol Mata. Yeah, so these ideas are fine. I think the reason why I'm not so inclined towards them is it feels like more of a very, very, very generic thing, which it could be because the pasuk is generic, but like I feel like the chiddush, I'm looking for the kind of chiddush in like the first approach we took. Yeah. And then Isaiah said the Havamina is thinking that you can make a Maskil decision, and that will lead to a life, to life and away from death. But then in reality, you need to be practicing this throughout life. Otherwise, you won't be able to make that decision. And then I said, it's not just a matter of one decision. There's no autopilot and coasting. There's constant, vigilance is needed. You need to be making these decisions throughout every stage of your life, because you're always going to have that potential to swerve to death. Okay. Anything else before we go to the meforshim, which I did not prepare today? Okay, let's go. Let's do
predicting that. I was going to say, I'm predicting that Rashi says that the Orach Chayim is Torah.
Rashi says that.
I'm predicting that. I hadn't
predicting. Let's see. No, that's not the right pasuk. We are in 24. Orach Chayim lamala lamaskil kmo srafim omdim mimala lifnei hachacham kashuta umuchenes Orach Chayim. Wow, that's interesting. So the linguistic thing he's pointing out here, this is in the psukim about kedusha. Yeshayahu Vav Aleph and Beis Bishnas Mos Hamelch Uziyahu ve'era es Adonai Yoshev al Kisei Ram v'Nisav v'Shulav Mileim es Ha'Hechal. So in the year of the death of the king Uziyahu, I saw my Lord sitting on the throne high and exalted, and his so this is a machlokes where the Shulav is the like referring to a part of the Kisei, or whether it's his like you call them trains, like the ends of your robes. We're filling the heichal, filling the temple. Srafim omdim mimal lo. Fiery angels were standing mimal lo, literally above him. Sheish kanafayim le'echad. Each one had 6 wings. Bishtayim yechaseh panav, ubishtayim yechaseh raglav, ubishtayim yofef. With 2 they covered their faces, 2 they covered their legs, and 2 they flew. So there's a problematic implication mimal lo. What's the problematic implication?
Above God.
Above God, yeah, that does not sound good, right? So most of the meforshim there, let's just see what Rashi says there, says mimal lo l'shimusho, above for his service, like in service of him. So he's learning in Mishlei. Orach Chayim lemala, interesting. So Orach Chayim lemala limaskil is in service of the maskil, I think. Lifnei hachacham means before the chacham. Kshuta umuchenes Orach Chayim. I'm not sure if that's what he's saying. Before the Chacham, the Orach Chayim is Kshuta. Is that like jewelry? Yeah. Oh, fine. So like from Lashon Emes, Kshot, right? Umuchenes. And let's see how this says it here. As instructed above for him, before the wise man, the path of love is arrayed and prepared. So they do say like bedecked, basically. I think that's probably like the translation. Yeah. All right. So now that Isaac drew us into Rashi as our first of the meforshim, then what do we make of this? We don't usually do Rashi. Yeah.
I'm kind of hearing this as a person who goes through life and is confronted by things, and is able to exist within that state, and then uses that state to serve him as like a growth mentality. And then through that ends up serving his mind, because there are people who there's tons of learning opportunities around them, but they treat whatever happens to them as like fate or as like failure or whatever, and they don't allow themselves to learn from it, and ultimately it ends up diminishing the growth that
I was getting the same vibe. I was what I associated to was Mishlei. I feel like I reviewed this earlier this year. The last psukim in this book of Mishlei, or this section of Mishlei, is at the end is Al Sadeh Ish Atzel. This is 24:30 through 34. Al Sadeh Ish Atzel Avarti. I passed by the field of a lazy man, Val Kerem Adam Chasar Lev, and by the vineyard of a man who lacks understanding. Hine Allah Kulu Kimshonim Kasu Fanav Charulim V'Geder Avanav Neharasa. Basically, it was all overgrown with nettles, and its face was covered with thistles, and I don't know what all these words are. And the stone fence was in ruins. I gazed, I applied my mind, I saw, and I took musar. Okay, and then he learns the lesson from here. So I think we defined what those four things are, but basically this is summarizing the derech of Mishlei, which is how many people are going to walk by that guy's field and not learn anything. But Mishlei is training you to be hearing the chachmos b'chutz tarona, like there's chachma calling out everywhere. And so the Mishlei for the Mishlei person, life is spread out. What did you say? Orach Chayim is kshuta umuchenes, right? Because he's approaching life in that way. And the implication of L'man sur mishol mata. So that's interesting. How would you say that? What does that mean according to Rashi? Because he doesn't spell it out. Because the temptation is to say that the opposite is just the person who's not looking that way, but it does not imply that in L'man sur mishol mata. Yeah.
I think it's further fleshing out the mistake the person's making. That when they walk past these things and don't absorb knowledge from it, they're like, like there's just a little thing. There's nothing there to really help me.
Right.
And they belittle it. Yeah. And in belittling it, they end up not growing from it, and that will ultimately.
Okay, right. So that actually, I didn't know you were going there first. I was going to go in the same direction, but what you see from here is the answer to the question about what about the middleman. There is no middleman, right? I mean, I know people. What was it? That's the point. Yeah, right. I know there's I feel like I hear this only in Kiruv context, but the escalator mushal, right? Is that like if you're on an escalator, you're on a down escalator. So if there's no such thing as standing still on an escalator. You're either like walking up, or you're like your default is it's bringing you down. So I think that's the idea here. Is if you're not, it's not like you can choose to go through life and then go through your existence and either tap into the Orach Chayim Lamala or just be regular, and then the death is over there. No, it's you're either going up and swerving away from death, or you're swerving towards death. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Yeah, Isaac?
I have, so I feel like that doesn't, to me, sound like what Rashi is saying. Okay. Because he says, kshutu muchenes. Yeah. I have a different approach to Rashi.
Yeah, I do too.
I think what he's saying is that the person who's living a life of chachma, a lot of the struggles and unknowns that people face in life are just not things that the chacham has to grapple with. Mm-hmm. It almost in a lot of cases it just feels like there's just a clear bedecked road in front of him. It walks along the road. There's because the seichel clearly tells you to do this, and he's not struggling with the seichel versus what he knows is a bad idea, but his emotions want him to do that. So I think that's what he's saying. Yeah.
Okay, so I hear that read. I don't know if that's true. I feel like that kind of goes against what we were, what my agreement with the other idea of I feel like that kind of partakes of the autopilot fantasy, I mean, he's not going to necessarily, actually, no, I think it's not true. I think it's not true. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, he won't struggle with his taivas as much, but then you've got that whole Gemara and the story with Abaye, gadol kol gadol mechaver yitzro gadol himenu, that there's a certain phenomenon of being more perfected in your mind can unlock taivas because you're dissolving the conscience or the the superficial reasons that would hold you back. So I'm not sure if you'll have to sell me on the idea if you think it's true. And I also don't know if that I don't know if that goes with kshuta umuchenes. Like, to me, that is really like, that's why I like Sean's imagery is it's like a banquet in front of him. It's all like it's there for the taking. So I feel like that's the image I'm getting from Rashi in terms of and that squares.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. You see, because I was, I didn't have an image when you said it.
Yeah, I know.
So until you said banquet, I think I feel like the way that you're reading it is that there's that it's not like an actual path. It's that there's lots of like things in front of him that are kshuta umuchenes.
Yeah, right. It seems like Rashi's also not really using the path analogy. Like, he's not, what do you call it? He's not emphasizing, like, we think of path as a way to get from point A to point B ish. He seems to be learning it as a I don't yell at me, Malvin. Orach, I think actually no, maybe you should yell at me. Hold on. Let's look at Malvin. Because I think there's like Orach might be, if I remember correctly, the royal road. Let's see if he says that. Meaning the paved, artificially constructed, nothing in front of you way. Let's see. Which I know sounds like it supports you, and it might, but 24. Orach Maskil Yitzayin la'atzmo shederech hachayim hu lamala v'derech hamavis lamata. What? Oh, whoa. V'hagam shekasha lalos lamala v'kavim. I'm not going to learn him. I just want to see if he says what Orach is. But yeah, it's weird. That's the second time we've seen that, right? Kafik also had the... Yeah, right. I wonder if there's... That'd be weird. I wonder if there's a different girsa, or in the actual text. Yeah, all right, fine. Yeah. No, it's not. All right, fine. Yeah. All right, yeah, but anyway, Rashi sounds like he's referring to more the readiness of it, not the pathness of it.
Yeah. So the way I think you're kind of running it like horizontally in front of you. Are these things?
Yeah.
I was saying straight in front of you. That's how I was reading it.
Right. I hear.
I'm not disagreeing with your objection. I'm just saying that's how what I thought.
That makes sense. I still like Sean's idea. The way I read the Rashi, and I think this depends on what you think his purpose is in quoting Yeshayahu, is if he's trying to get across the idea of shimush, of like serving the Serafim or serving God, and then you use that with lifnei hachacham, then I think the implication is he's saying that if you want to get the Orach Chayim, you have to present yourself or be present before the Chacham, and that's where you're going to get this type of preparation from like, where are you going to find the Orach Chayim? It's not out there, it's in front of the Chacham. Lifnei Chacham kshuta umuchenes Orach Chayim. So it's advocating being around people or being in service of people who are going to teach you the Orach Chayim, and I think that fits better with the cluster of psukim, because in the cluster of psukim we're talking about advisors, and getting good advice. So I think your idea is good as a standalone. Sorry, your idea is good as a good reading of Rashi as a standalone idea. I think my reading of Rashi fits more with the cluster and maybe Yeshayahu. So I think they're two good ideas. Yeah. All right, let's do Metzudas David. I'm just going to use the Al-Torah one. 24. Orach Shemura Orach Chayim. Shmura Orach Chayim lenefesh hamaskil leleches lamala. The path of life is preserved, I would say, probably, maybe, or like guarded for the nefesh of the maskil leleches lamala, to walk up. Az tashuv el ha'elokim, then he will return to God. Lama'an tasir hanefesh milaredes az el sha'ol mata, in order to turn his soul away or remove his soul. I don't know, tasir, from going downwards to the grave. V'hu hagehenom, and that's Gehenom. I thought Rashi was going to say that actually. About tashuv el makora asher chotzava mimeno, but it'll go back to its source from whence it was hewn. that is a reference to Koheles, I think.
You die?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I just want to get the pasuk in Koheles here. Is it's either in 5. Oops, it's either in 5 or it's in 12. Or I'm wrong. Yeah. So yeah. The dust will return to the earth. This is when you die. The dust will return to the earth from where it was, and the spirit will return to God who gave it. Yeah. Yeah. So he seems to be talking about afterlife, right? So what is he saying though? Shmura Orach Chayim, and that's always says nefesh, lenefesh Maskil, right? So the path to Olam Haba is guarded for the Maskil, leleches lamala, to go upwards, then to return to God in order to remove his soul from going downwards to Gehenna. But it's going to go back to where it was. Yeah. So what's the? And I know it's not typically our way of learning Mishlei, but if we did learn it Mishleically our way, then what would we say? Like, in other words, this is one of these weird things that there are meforshim who learn that Mishlei is talking about ideas about Olam Haba. Okay. My derech, which I think I got from Rabbi Moskowitz, I mean, I know I got my Mishlei derech, but I'm saying like my derech learning psukim like these is that it's using Olam Haba as like a fact, but it's giving you Mishleic decision-making advice where that is one of the Mishleic consequences of getting Olam Haba, so it still is giving you Mishleic advice.
The language of Shmura Orach Chayim,
yeah,
for me is just, what's it being guarded for?
So
how is it being guarded?
Okay, so I'll tell you, I think where the other reason why he might be saying this is Bereshis Gimel is Vayigarsh es Adam Vayashkim Mikenan Gan Eden es Hakruvim es Lad Hacharim Hespers Lishmor es Derech Eitz HaChayim, right? So God cast the man out and then stationed to the east of Eden. Great book. The Kruvim and the flame of the rotating sword, however you want to translate that, flashing sword, to guard the path of the tree of life, right? And that's, according to, I think it's not shot, but I think it's like standard interpretation that that's talking about Olam Haba, right? Yeah.
So what does this have? If that's what he's referencing, does that have to do with Mishlei?
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like it's saying, by the way, okay, well, let's go to basic level here, right? Havamina is that Mishlei is only going to help you in Olam Hazeh, right? Kamash Malan, that again, assuming that this I would be inclined to go like Isaac said, is that Maskil is lav davka Mishlei archetype Maskil, but just good Mishlei actor, or the type of seichel that Mishlei trains you in. So the Havamina is that that's not going to be enough. That's not going to get you to Olam Haba. Kamash Malan, no, Mishlei training gets you to Olam Haba, and I think that's a real significant chiddush, because I think we put so much emphasis on, let's say like Mishlei's mission is Ladas Chachma Musar, right? So let's take what most of the Mefarshim say is Chachma is intellectual perfections and Musar is ethical perfection of midos, etc. So, and we hold that perfection of midos is a preparation for the ultimate perfection. Okay, so you might think that it's just preparation and does not contribute to your actual perfection of intellect. Like I sometimes used to like lie awake at night wondering, like, okay, if I only get as far as Mishlei in life, I don't really get into like the real like perfection of let's say like metaphysics or whatever, then like did I just spend my whole life preparing? And if so, then I was like, okay, fine, that's as far as I got. Like I can only do what I got, But I think that there is like the more I've learned Mishlei, the more I realize, no, you are preparing your midos, but you're also getting ideas, that are perfection of the soul. Like Mishleic ideas are ideas that perfect your soul. Don't ask me how the soul works and how Olam Haba works. Okay, I think that there's a question when I was doing the Ralbag. I'm just gonna see if I can find this email here. It was a great question here. When I was doing the Judaism Demystified Ralbag issue, Ralbag question of Ralbag episode with Rabbi David Campbell, who knows Ralbag. He asked me a question. So he was like asking me a bunch of questions about Ralbag, and we talked about cows and tefillin, I think was the thing. He was saying how, like, according to Ralbag, okay, I'm not going to find this here. According to let me look one more place. No, I'm not gonna find. He was saying how, like, according to Ralbag, when you gain knowledge of a cow, okay, that's studying the actual bria, and like there are ideas there that give your soul immortality. But his question was, according to the Ralbag, if you study Hilchos Tefillin, is that just a preparation for you to then be able to study R Sheishes and Merkava? And like that is where you get Olam Haba, and that's what gives your soul knowledge? Or is there an actual, like, does the soul gain intrinsic perfection from studying halacha? And I think that, like, you could say that. So I think there's a lot of room for like metaphysics in terms of understanding this here. But I think just the messaging here is Mishlei will get you Olam Haba. Don't think that it's just a means to an end, a means to, don't think that it's just a preparation for being able to work on that independently. It actually helps you this. How that works, I don't know. We good? All right, let's do Rabbeinu Yonah now. Rabbeinu Yonah says, Mishu dar ba'ir achas. Did not expect him to start that way. Someone who lives in a city. Lo yaskim lazov yishuv diras ha'ir hahi v'laso sa tefela. So someone who lives in a city will not decide to abandon the settlement of his dwelling in the city and to make it secondary ad yivchar b'diras ir acheres, until he has chosen another city to dwell in. Right? You're not going to like sell your house in one city before you've gotten a house in the other one. Az lo yisyashiv b'diras ha'ir asher hu garsham lahachin klei habayis v'livnos batim v'liknos sados ukramim. Then he will not be settle himself in dwelling in the city that he's temporarily dwelling there, to prepare his furnishings, and to build houses and buy fields and vineyards. I didn't quite get what he's saying. Oz lo yisyashiv? I would have said Oz yisyashiv b'diras. No. I don't know what the low is throwing me off here. I mean, it sounds like the mashal basically is like, you're not going to uproot yourself before you have, like, prepared where you're going to live in the next city, right? Then you'll be able to like settle that properly. But I don't know. It says Ubir Indians have a shari. It's funny. I was gonna say this sounds like a shari tshuva Rabbeinu Yonah, not a Mishlei Rabbeinu Yonah. He doesn't usually talk in like Musari type tones like that. So let's look at footnote 45. Rei shari tshuva beis yotes. Oh, he doesn't quote it. That's annoying. Let's look at. I'm sure this is probably on Al Torah. Beis. I think the shari tshuva is on here. I hope so. Shari tshuva. Yep, shari tshuva the Rabbeinu Yonah. Beis test, we said? Yotes. Okay. Skip it. Yeah, okay. It was just super long. You know what? I'm just gonna see if he uses the same analogy here. Ear. No. All right. You know what? Just because I don't want to get stuck in Rabbinu Yonah, let's just see what we can get from what he told us here. Funny Rabbinu Yonah.
So how does he get it from the pasuk?
Yeah, right. Yeah, this is talking about a path. That's where I thought he was going. I was like, if you want to leave a city, you should take this path and not that path.
Yeah. Can we say Orach Chayim is the house, and that you need to have like a settled house in order to engage the mind?
Like a physical house?
Not necessarily.
But
like you need to be settled. It could be talking about like more emotional settlement.
Yeah.
A person needs to be emotionally settled in order to serve their mind. And people try and focus just on developing the mind without refining the emotions and bringing them in line.
I think that's a good idea. My intuition is telling me that the Meiri might say something like that. I don't know if that's where Rabbinu Yonah is going. My intuition is Rabbinu Yonah is also talking about Olam Haba, that you need to like prepare a house in the next city, and I think that's also what he's alluding to with Garsham. I mean, people often use like there's psukim where David Melch describes himself as a ger, or where Yaakov describes himself as a ger. And what do you mean? He wasn't a ger, but we're all gerim in this world. We're temporarily dwelling here in order to like have the permanent settlement in Olam Haba. That's like I'm getting strong Olam Haba vibes here. All right. So I don't want to. We have 15 minutes. Let's do another one. Let's do Meiri. Orach Chayim lo, and I'm going to do R Sheishes. Orach Chayim lemala lemaskil lemansur mishal mata zem miyuchad inyan hachachma. This is specific to chachma. That's interesting, as opposed to what? But Amar, he said, Shederach HaChaim HaNitzchim, here we go, eternal life, the path to eternal life, Hu Shiyale HaMaskil Derech Mala, is that the Maskil should go upwards. Madrega after madrega, level after level, al Seder Malos Asulam, climbing the ladder. V'hakdamos v'hatzaos nechonos lahavio l'shleimus hanitzchi, with the preparatory steps and introductions, or there's not a good English word for this, meaning like the proper preparations and like prerequisites, I guess is the best English, that bring him to eternal perfection. Because this, when he gets this, he'll save his soul from going downwards to destruction and perishing of his soul. Okay, so that is in Seder Halimud. So that's what he says in Chachma here, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I mean, this is a classic Meiri message in Derech Nisters is don't skip steps, okay, in your learning, right? But what do we get from framing it as Orach Chayim Lamala and focusing on the eternity of the soul? Yeah,
I have another observation, which is with this approach, it might make sense now within the cluster of, in order to take this step-by-step process of the mind, you need to be engaging in counsel and interacting with people who are going to be giving you chachma, and so like this is the ultimate vision of why you should be engaging in all the stuff.
So that's interesting. I mean, I think that's a nice idea, but knowing the Meiri, I think if he was connecting this to the advice thing in any way, then he would have said that. Okay. And not only would have said that, he would have clustered it, right? Meiri is one of the meforshim that does cluster the psukim for us. Yeah. We'll see what he says. Let's read the whole thing. O kara sh'ol mata hatanug ha'afari. So that's like Sean said earlier, that the grave below is dustly enjoyments, okay, meaning material enjoyments. Klomar Orach HaChayim, she's asik b'malas hachachma. So the Orach Chayim is engaging in the I don't know how you say malas hachachma. V'yasur min hatanugim ha'afarim ki afar heim el afar deyashuvu. Right. So that sounds like Sean's idea of the second half from before. Yeah. Right. So what is this first part saying about the skipping steps? Why? Again, this is such a classic Meiri thing. Meiri, you don't need to say that, like, why are you saying that here? And why with this mushal is he saying that this is the best fit for that mushal?
You're saying why is the mushal the sulam?
Yeah, the sulam, and don't skip steps. Do all your introductions, And again, like again, just to make it relatable to our yeshiva, right? Like this is the people who are only interested in working on svara, right? And either don't want to learn how to read or don't like facts. Like those are the two. Yeah, John.
Yeah, I was thinking, can we frame it in the journey versus the destination?
Okay, go ahead.
Fixated on the destination.
Yeah.
And Orach Chayim. Chayim is not the destination. Chayim is being present in the moment and taking things where you are.
Does not sound like what he's saying. Chaim nitzchim, eternal life, sounds like the destination. Sheder Chaim nitzchim, and that is talking about Olam Haba. Yeah. I mean, I think that there is. Let's just talk basic level, right? There's we haven't said this in this year in a while, right? There's two approaches to take when you have a pasuk that's obvious. One is davka, try to find a hook that like suggests a chiddush, and the second is lean into the obvious and define it clearly, and then you'll often emerge on the other side with like an idea. So in this case, the obvious idea here is that the Havamina is I can successfully skip steps and get Olam Haba, and perfect my soul in a way that gives it eternal life, right? And Kamash Malan, no, you will jeopardize your Olam Haba by doing that, because there's no way to get the end without the preparations. Like you cannot effectively engage in Svara if you don't get facts and learn how to read. So that's the mentality it's addressing here. Yeah.
Maybe the chiddush could be the second half, meaning it's obvious that you need to take the proper steps in order to develop.
Yeah.
But if you don't do that, maybe I just won't develop. But the chiddush is no, you're actually gonna.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so right. So did he tell us what? No, he didn't tell us what it is, right? Just midres mata b'shachas v'avon nafsha. Yeah. So what would the pitfall be if we could just flesh it out a bit?
Well, I mean, you're gonna gain distorted ideas because you skip steps, and
right.
That will inhibit.
Okay, yeah. So let's use a good analogy, and I'm sure we've all encountered this. Okay, right? Is that there can be such a thing as people who are naturally intelligent, but because they don't train themselves in rigorous, disciplined thinking, end up saying stupid smart things, right? Meaning like things that like use fancy words or like are like theorizing on a grand scale, but like they're applying a very, very like that is true. That's not what I was gonna say. I was gonna say that they're applying like a high potential intellect to something without guidance, and you end up just getting like, it's very analogous to like to ChatGPT, right? It's a very, very capable tool, but like not disciplined in how to think, yet. And so they could fall into that trap of like thinking that they're thinking, but they're really imagining and like dressing it up as thought, and it could like lead you to like embrace distorted ideas and actually destroy you, not just not gaining. Like, for example, if you try to, like, there are other areas where like if you try to build a house, no, that's actually bad. That could be disastrous. Like there are other areas where if you don't do adequate preparations, you just get nothing. Like you just don't advance. Then there are ones that it actually sets you up for destruction. If you build a house without doing the preparations in terms of whatever house people do with preparations, the house could fall, and like destroy you. Yeah. Yeah, Isaac?
Yeah, I'd say you see this with the Rambam's three groups.
Yeah.
The people who like think that they know what Chazal is talking about.
Yeah.
Whether they think that the Chazal are right or wrong, they're it's not just like neutral that they think the Chazal are saying it's like stupid things. It's actually like
it's positively destructive.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Right. Yeah, that's good. That's a good example. Anything else about what? Let's see. Is there still sits weird to me? What sits weird to me just knowing Meiri is like I feel like this is a Derek Nister idea, but he's not framing it that way. He's putting it in the this is the meaning of the pasuk. He must be getting it from Lamala and Sheol Mata here, meaning that he must be Orach Chayim, Chayim and Sheol Mata, meaning must be eternal life. But yeah, Isaac.
Yeah, so I'd say it's I mean he's talking about Chachma, but I think it's true for like any area of understanding, not just like lofty intellectual pursuits.
Yeah.
And also many things in life where if you just if like you assume you're really good and you just they're like, okay, I'm just gonna skip steps.
Yeah.
Then it'll like that you will get like destruction, like not just neutral, it'll be very damaging.
Right. So I think that's a good application of the practical idea, but I think he is insisting on Hachaim HaNitzchim. Meaning he's not saying what you're saying. He's saying what he's saying, and then you're applying it to other areas.
Yeah. He also says miyuchad le'inyan hachachma.
Right. Yeah. Well, that part I think could still fit with your idea, because that just means that we're talking about Chachma. But then once he says Der Hachaim HaNitzchim and Avadon of the Nefesh, then we're only talking about Olam Haba here. In this. Process.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Okay. This is a good lesson, by the way. I think this has happened several times today here, is that like, when we're in exploratory, developing our own ideas mode on the pasuk, there's a lot of wiggle room. But then when we read the meforshim, then I think it is tempting to it is legitimate to take things you see from the meforshim and then use them for your own ideas, but you got to be on guard against projecting your own good interpretations of the pasuk inspired by the meforshim onto the words of the meforshim. Like Rav Pesach's measure for let's see, anyone knows this. How do you know if you got a good svara on Tosfos? for example.
If you would say write it the way that he wrote it.
Exactly, right? As if you would write the svara and it would turn out the words that he's using, in the way that he wrote it. And if you see something that doesn't quite fit in those words, then there's always a chance that you might be projecting. Okay, there is also a chance that the Rishonim you're learning is a bad writer. There are Rishonim that are better and worse writers, but like you don't want to assume that from the get-go. So I think here, like that's the test here is like, am I giving my good interpretation of the pasuk inspired by the meforshim, or is this what they're saying? And if like you're not reading the Chaim Nitzchim, then like there's chances are you're projecting onto it. I think it's just good methodology here. All right, let's do Rabbeinu Yonah, short one. Orach Chayim Lamala Lamaskil Od Ze Medaber Be'inyan HaNizkar. This is talking about the previous topic. What did he learn the previous topic was? Did we learn the previous one? I don't think we did. Yeah, so let's learn the previous one. So this was Simcha Le'ish B'manefiv. There's a joy to a man in his mouth's reply. Shav Lamash Amar Ivel Simcha L'chasar Leiv. This is going back to the pasuk of foolishness is joy to a person lacking a mind. V'yomer Ata, he says now, Ki emeshu Ki kol adam sameach be'imrei fiv. It's true that everyone rejoices in the statements of his mouth. V'yireh lo Ki hem divrei emes, and it'll appear to him that they're divrei emes. What was that? Okay, that they're true, right? So you enjoy it, and therefore you think that what you're saying is true. V'davar bito matov, klomar matov hadavar kashu ba beito. How good is a statement when it comes in its time? V'lo lavo mehem shum nezek ein alav ashma bezeh, and there will not come any harm from this, and there's no guilt in this. Im yetivu dvarav be'einav. Oh, so there's no harm and guilt if it's good in your eyes. In other words, there is a pitfall of the phenomenon that you enjoy what you're saying, you think it's true. But if it's be'ito, which I assume he means it's true, there's nothing wrong with enjoying it. Aval kashiyihu osan hadvarim inyanim shiyatza mehem shum pe'ula lo ye'os lo shiismach ba'asher matza yad da'atov lo yira lo ki'ilu hatzlicha kvar malachto. That was a long sentence. But when those kashiyihu osan hadvarim inyanim, when those statements are matters shiyatza mehem shum pe'ula, where some action comes from them, lo ye'os lo, it is not appropriate for him. Shiismach ba'asher mata yad dato. It's not appropriate to rejoice in the fact that he found yad dato. I don't know what yad dato means. He shouldn't feel as though he was successful in his work. He should seek advice of v'yitur achareha and look at try to find it, seek it out. Val yismoch al dato, and should not rely on his mind. Ela yivatel dato mipnei das acherin. He should negate his mind in the presence of the mind of others. V'yi yishomel eitz, and he should listen to advice. So what are we getting from that pasuk here? I know we only have 2 minutes. I mean, very loosely speaking, it sounds like he's saying you have to be aware of the phenomenon, like we said last week, you have to be aware of the phenomenon of enjoying your own ideas and then thinking that they're true. But then he says, this is the key part here. I don't know what it means, shum pa'ula. It's just like a weird statement there. All right, okay. If we had time, we would focus on it. Let's just see now that we know what the inyan is, because that's what we read that for. This is speaking about the inyan above. V'yomar ki hamaskil yirelo ki Orach Chayim klomer derech ha'etza hatova lamala. To the maskil, it will seem that the Orach Chayim, meaning the path of advice, of good advice, is lamala mimeno, is higher than him, above him. V'she'ein datu masik aleh, and his mind can't reach it. V'alkein hu mavakish osam me'acherin. That's why he seeks it from others. That's interesting. Laman sur mishol mata, in order to turn away from the grave below. Klomar v'avur zeh, because of this, yasur mishol mata shelo yipol me'atzaso machshavto teitza lahaslacha. That is going to cause him to turn away from the grave below, so that his plan will not fail and his plan will succeed. Yeah.
Sounds like the phenomenon where you're very emotional about something.
Yeah.
You know what the best choice is, and you just need to talk to somebody else who's a chacham, who's going to tell you that your mind is correct, because your emotions are telling you to do the exact opposite. And so, in order to, like, it feels like your ideas are too far away from what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so you just need that reassurance that whatever it is that you're thinking.
That's interesting. I was getting the opposite vibe, which is he's saying that. Because the previous pasuk was warning against falling in love with your own ideas, right? Which you're saying this is antidote to, right? I maybe this could be the same. I'm going to say it the way I was going to say it, and you tell me if this is the same or different. Is that he's actually, I'm going to lead with an analogy here. Okay, that good teaching advice is if something goes wrong, the teacher should always assume that it's his fault. Okay, you should never blame people. Now, it could be that it's the student's fault or it's no one's fault, but if you always assume that it's your fault, you will become a better teacher, right? So he's saying that the Maskil should always view the Orach Chayim as though it's above him, meaning that that even though I'm a Maskil, the proper path is always seeking advice. Kind of like what we were saying before. We said last week that you should always view it as, or maybe it was in the Hafir Machshavah Lab Sod, right? That you should always view it as, if I don't ask for advice, I will fail. And even you're a Maskil, don't say, well, I'm a Maskil, I know my own advice, because you might be falling into that trap from the previous pasuk of falling in love with your own ideas. You should view it as the path is above me, which means I need to ask other people above me, So I think that pairs with your application here.
Yeah, I think we are saying two completely different things.
Okay,
yeah. We're talking about when the person hears a good idea and they know that's true, but they think that it's not practical for them, that it's not something that they can actualize.
Yeah.
And through talking to other people and other people on the same level, saying that, no, you can do this and I do this too. Yeah. That helps make it feel like it's not something that's above you, but something that you can actually practically do. That's how I was hearing it.
Okay, interesting. Hold on a second. Yeah, I'm learning this, that he's saying you should seek it from people who are high. Actually, yeah. I don't know. I guess where I'm getting, I will answer. Where I'm getting this from is just that the trap of falling in love with your own ideas, and you're going to be particularly prone to that if you are a Maskil. So you should view it as above you and not in front of you. Yeah. All right, two good ideas. I'm not going to summarize here just because we're already over time and I have to go. All right, good pasuk though. Yeah. All right. So next week, who is here